my success is different to what your success is. Success
Yes.
is it's a personal experience. And I think a lot of people have these preconceived ideas of what success is, like social success, or what I guess society or community tells us what success is, rather than
Right.
us choosing for ourselves. And yeah, I mean, that aligns so neatly with the kind of way that I like to work with my clients in. The first step is always, you need to understand, what do you actually want to do? Because
Mhm.
so many of us, myself included, you fall into things and you just kind of, you end up.
That's where our ongoing goal is to help our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. If you've been here before, welcome back. And if this is your first time, thank you for tuning in and taking the time to join us. Now, embarking on the journey of career development, professional growth is like navigating a rolling river. Just like a skilled river guide helps steer the course through rapids and calm waters, Dan Vries guides individuals in their career paths to reach their full potential. Now, Dan is a seasoned career coach dedicated to helping individuals find fulfillment and success in their personal lives. And it's totally possible. With years of experience in corporate environments and a passion for coaching, Dan brings a unique perspective to the world of career development. And in this episode, Dan shares valuable insights on the importance of defining success on your own terms and creating a vision for your career that aligns with your personal values and goals. So we're set, we're ready to go. Let's check out our interview with Dan. Enjoy. Hey, Dan, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living podcast. I appreciate you for making a time like this all the way down under in Australia.
Thanks, Audley. It's really cool to be here, and also the fact that our times actually align really well, even though we're on opposite sides of the world. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's the synergies of life, I like to think of it as, right?
Yep.
Now we spend much time on this podcast really encouraging individuals sort of to live this best audacious life that we talk about, and the way we do that, it's going to be different for everyone, and the pathway we choose and the decisions that we make, and the place that we end up, it's not going to be the same. It's a very much an individualized success, if you will. And I very much liken that to our professional careers, right? Like, we're not all in the same jobs, and we might start one place and end up somewhere else, and we may pivot and change, and we may decide we don't like it, want to do something different. Like, all these things can happen, and so it makes so much sense for you as a career coach to be part of this conversation, to kind of walk us through some of these things that happen to individuals on their pathway to their own professional audaciousness, if you will. So maybe as a starting point, Dan, we can get you to sort of talk about, again, a little bit about your work and kind of what brought you to this point.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to quickly pick up on something you said there about that individual success, and
Uh-huh.
how that's it's a personal experience, and that is 100% aligned with what I talk about in career coaching. I think that my success is different to what your success is. Success
Yes.
is it's a personal experience, and I think a lot of people have these preconceived ideas of what success is, like social success, or what I guess society or community tells us what success is, rather than
Right.
us choosing for ourselves. And yeah, I mean, that aligns so neatly with the kind of way that I like to work with my clients in. The first step is always, you need to understand, what do you actually want to do? Because
Mhm.
so many of us, myself included, you fall into things and you just kind of, you end up there, or uh, you float through and you end up somewhere and it becomes your thing. And then because you're there, maybe out of no conscious decision or thought process of your own, you then attach this concept of success of, well, people who do this, success looks like that.
Right.
And that you could be going down the wrong path, because if you haven't chosen what you want to do consciously, based on your personal values, based on your personality, based on your innate skills, capabilities, talents, all of those things that we have in one area or another,
Mhm.
you could work for 20 years towards this goal that you think is success, ended up getting there and go, damn, this is not what I wanted. Why did I
What
spend so long working on it?
what the heck is this?
Um, Yeah. And so, yeah, that's definitely, creating the vision is where I always start with people. You need to, sometimes you need to work really hard and think about yourself and think about what you actually want to create this vision of what you want to create. Because without, I mean, I call it a vision, you can call it whatever you want. There's lots of different ways of talking about it. But if you don't have an idea or a concept or a vision of what you want to achieve with your career, then someone else is going to choose it for you. And you're just going to end up living someone else's dream or someone else's idea of what's good for you. So, yeah, the first step is always that vision creation. And it takes a lot of introspection. It takes a lot of reflection, self-thought, and
Yes.
getting into some kind of, sometimes confronting topics for some people. It can be. But, if you don't do the hard work, then, you're probably not going to get the results.
Gotcha. You're absolutely right. And I'm only gonna go, jump out on a limb here and assume that's exactly what you did to get you where you are now, right?
I started off doing what everyone does, or at least not what everyone does. Like there are some much more conscientious and conscious people than me out there, but I fell into what I started doing. I just kind of,
Yeah.
floating through, and it took me longer than I'd care to admit to end up in a position where I decided to make a conscious change and decide, no, actually, is this really what I want to do? And is this meaningful to me? Does it have real purpose? Do I find
Right.
satisfaction in it?
Right.
All of those things. Now, I'm also not against making money and living a lifestyle. All those things are important too.
Right.
Doesn't have to be one or the other. You can have it all. You can have your cake and you can eat it too when it comes to your career.
Dan, let me
But
ask you.
yeah,
Sorry. Let
yeah,
me ask you. So,
yeah.
so the role of position you in, was it one of those situations where people on the outside go, "Oh my gosh, you've achieved this level of mastery and success. Oh, this is a great position," and you're sitting there going, "Oh, what is this?"
Yeah, that's a pretty apt kind of assessment there.
Right.
It was, oh, look, I thoroughly enjoyed most of my corporate career and
Sure.
I did like what I did, but eventually it gets to a point or a time where it may have been suitable at a time, but we all grow and change as people and we become different versions of ourselves. And sometimes that misaligns with whatever we're doing
Yep.
in our careers at the times. And then you get to that point where you go, do I really want to be doing this? For me, there was definitely a point where, there were physical symptoms of stress,
Sure.
severe headaches at the end of the day. And I don't get headaches, like that's not a thing for me.
Right.
And
Right.
then
Right.
these physical symptoms eventually they hit you. And eventually, instead of writing it off as well, I'll just take some Panadol and have some water and sit on the couch for a while.
Right.
You go, I shouldn't be experiencing this. Something isn't quite right. I need to at least look into it, figure out what the hell's going on
Yeah.
and what kind of change that I can make instead of, tying yourself to a specific job title or role or
Yes. Yes.
position, which so many of us do. I mean, think about it. You meet someone new,
Yep.
maybe not on a podcast, but you meet someone new at a party. What's the second question you ask them after you know their name? So what do you do?
Right.
Right? And what
Right.
do you do is such a big part of who we
Who
are
we
and
are.
who we communicate ourselves as
Yes.
people. Hey, hey, I'm Dan, I'm an engineer, or hey, I'm Dan, I'm a doctor. Like
Right.
that's,
That's right.
but you're more than that. And
We
so
are.
there's so much more, right? There's so much more than that. But,
Yeah.
I focus on the career piece. I focus on, because careers are important and they're a huge part of our lives. And they are a huge potential source of satisfaction and pleasure and fulfillment. And they also fulfill that need for making a living and
Sure.
living the lifestyle that we want.
Yep.
But we're more than that. And I think that by tying ourselves too tightly to any one particular concept, we potentially set ourselves up for great disappointment when things that are outside of our control happen. Economic downturns, redundancies,
Sure. Sure.
layoffs,
Oh my God.
all that
Changes.
sort of stuff happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that happens. And if you say, I'm Dan, I'm the lawyer, and then the law firm goes down, and then you get, well, what do you have?
What's your
What do
identity?
you have if you don't have that title, that job, that position? It becomes really tough. And that's not career specific, but that's something that I definitely work with people about, setting those self expectations around, what you are is not,
Yep.
what you do is not everything about who you are.
Yeah, yeah. So two things I want to touch on certainly the identity piece in a moment. But I want to actually go back. Barring health issues aside, as in your case, you were in a role that wasn't physically good for you from a health standpoint. Having said that, I do think that when you look at the work that you're doing now as a career coach, the fact that you're doing something sort of puts you in the best position to be able to counsel others. You're not just reading in a book and going, well, you should be in a job that makes you actually were in something that you didn't find satisfaction, fulfillment in. So it's almost a necessary part of the journey in a weird kind of perverse sort of way, if you will. It wasn't making you
Yep.
happy, wasn't cause you, joy, it wasn't giving you satisfaction, it was actually detrimental to you. But it was kind of sort of necessary when you look at what you're doing now. And so that's the first point I just want to touch on. And I think you're bang on with respects to the identity and the jobs that we do. And I would challenge individuals who solely connect with their job to really think about who they are. And maybe I would even question, do they know who they are? If when you go to a party and meet someone, you say, hey, I'm an engineer, and that's where it stops, right? It's
Mm.
and perhaps right, that's what we want people to know about us, right? And perhaps
Yep.
by saying that I'm a doctor, there's a certain level of prestige that comes along with it. And
Yep.
then maybe that's a strategy. But for those that are specifically connecting with my job, and that's what I lead with first, as opposed to, hey, I'm a father, I'm a community
Mm.
member, I volunteer at my local church. There's all sorts of other things. I like stand-up comedies or whatever it is, right? Things that you
Yep.
can talk about that speak to who you are. But if you're leading with my job and this is what I do from 9 to 5 and this is who I am, I question it a little bit. Not challenging. I'm respectfully
Yeah.
question, if you will.
Totally agree. And, I'm pro career and I am pro work, right?
Yep.
Obviously, but I still think that the healthy balance is important. And because we are more than just, we're not productivity machines. We
Right.
are humans with families and feelings and emotions and have dreams and desires and all these sorts of cool things, some of which can be fulfilled by a career, but not all of which.
Right.
And so you're spot on there in terms of the piece about, not the identity piece, the being connected to industry, or having experienced it. Now, yes,
So
I
my
do career
identity piece
coaching.
wasn't spot on, no? As I said.
No, no, well, you haven't got there yet.
Okay. Okay.
You haven't got there yet. So, um, the piece about still, like, for me, it's really
Yes.
important that I stay connected
Yes.
with industry, with working. I don't do this full time. This is something
Right.
I'm passionate about
I
this, and I
love it.
have a small amount of clients,
I
but
love
I
it.
also operate a couple of my own businesses. And for me, that credibility of still being in industry, doing work, understanding what's happening in the wider industry, what's going on, what the trends are, how people are acting, what's new and what's happening. I think you run the risk of becoming out of date, a little bit obsolete,
Right.
if
Yep.
you only do I read the book and I tell you what the textbook says, or
Right.
I'm
Right.
the coach that tells you what to do, but I'm not doing it myself anymore. I think you run the risk of becoming, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
outdated.
That's
So
right.
I'm strong advocate of, I practice I preach what I have practiced, and I
Yeah.
continue to practice what I want to be involved. I want to understand. I want
Yes.
to stay
Yes.
relevant.
You
So
felt the pain,
yeah,
right? You felt that pain, and you
yeah,
know what it feels like. And so when you talk about connecting with clients, and it shows also, it's also important to point out that you target young people, and that's even a
mm,
very very important group at especially the
yes.
early stages of their professional career. So to be able to impart those insights, those real life painful experiences, is so important to them.
There's a reason, like, I am very bullish on the next generation, as much as, you might hear a bunch of shit talk about Gen Z. I'm very bullish on the next generation from my experience, especially all the people that I've interacted with.
Mhm.
They're conscientious, they're smart, they've got the right attitude almost all the time, more than I did when I was that age, to be quite
Absolutely.
honest. And I also know that there's a lot of stuff that you never get taught. And for most of us, we learn it the hard way through bitter experience. And we pick things up from, like, conversations here or there, and we have to piece it all together. And you can't just take a class on office politics. You can't just take a class on how to manage your manager. None of these things kind of really exist in any formal sense, and you need to learn through experience. And if if there's one thing I've learned in, my 20-year career so far, is that if you can learn from someone else's mistakes, that's the best way to learn, because you don't get the pain and you get to learn it so much quicker. And it's kind of like a nice little shortcut.
Yeah. No, I absolutely think it is. Absolutely. And again, it's great that you're able to do that off of that. I think that makes you that much more valuable in terms of what you can offer. It's a great, great thing. Um, I, is there such a thing as a dream career? And I want to be explain,
Hmm.
again, we talk about, the jobs that you love. Is there a dream career? And what is it? What is that? Is it a real thing, or is it just a term that's out there?
I so kind of like the kind of like the everyone's success is what they define it to themselves to be, or someone
Mhm,
else will define it for you. But
mhm,
our own success is a personal experience. A dream career is it's a personal experience, and one that is unique to you as an individual. Your path, even your ideal path, whatever you love most in your career, like all of the steps along the way, there is such thing. But I think that only in hindsight can you realize it. I don't think you can be that. You can't map it out in your head. If you're going to map it out in your head before you decide to go and do it, you are going to set yourself up for disappointment big
right.
time, because it will not go to plan. Full stop. It will not go to plan.
Are you sure?
Um, I am positive that it won't go to plan. Um, and even like think of like really big like outliers, like Kobe Bryant.
Mhm,
Think of like sports stars. Think of Formula One race drivers. Think of, I don't know, like a professional poker player. They all do things that they love, but I guarantee you, even those people, they've come up against stuff and gone, oh, damn, that is not what I expected. What am I going to do? But I think the dream career exists in the rearview mirror. And it's when you look back and go, I really like who I am now. I really like what I'm doing now. And I couldn't be doing what I am now, what I am now, and I could not be who I am now unless I went through all of that stuff before now. And that piece is, retrospectively, it's easy to look at those tough times and go, that really helped me to become who I
sure,
am today.
sure,
But it's also, you hate those experiences in the time because they're hard. And those hard experiences, we avoid pain as humans and we avoid difficulty. And that's kind of baked into our DNA. But when you look at them in the rearview mirror, that's when you can appreciate them and respect them, and just love what they are for what they've given you and what they've allowed you to achieve and to get where you want to go.
sure.
And I personally think that for someone who, I guess, likes who they are and likes what they do at any point in time, can appreciate that whatever they've had to go through to get to where they are, if one little piece of that was different, you wouldn't be who you are and what you're doing right now without all of those steps before. So that dream career, I see it as a retrospective thing, not a
Mhm.
I'm dreaming of my future career and it's going to be the most amazing thing ever and I'll have all the rainbows and unicorns in the world. Like, no, I don't really see it that way.
Right, right. And I certainly love the exercise, because I really much think it's an exercise of looking in the rearview mirror and being able to identify, almost like a connect the dots sort of thing, right? To see like you do this and do this, and it all sort of makes sense. Um, my very first part-time job, I was 15 years old, and I worked for a company. It was a coat checking company, and
Mm-hmm.
they had sort of contracts in different hotels and different event centers and convention centers. And so at the age of 15 years old, I'm hanging and I'm interacting with, and these are rich people, from my perspective,
Yep.
right? These are
Yeah.
rich
Yeah.
big people, and I'm having to interact with them. But when I look at what that did for my communication skills at an early age, and allowed me to understand what it meant to work in those types of environments. And so because it was a part-time job and I had to wear like a tie and a white shirt, I
Hmm.
used to go after school. So I used to dress up at school and put on and come in to school this shirt and tie. As a 15-year-old kid, who does that, right? But and there's something when you put on a tie, your chest goes a bit higher and you feel prouder about yourself. And I was doing this at a young age, thinking it was just it was a job, my part-time job. But when you look back, you're thinking, okay, so it helped me build my confidence. It increased my conversational skills. It allowed me to feel comfortable in a space that maybe I wouldn't normally be in, right? And so it's so that kind of thing. But you really need to sit down and analyze step by step by step
Yep.
to totally recognize, okay, wait a second, that's where that is, and that's how it serves me, and here's how I'm using it now. And so as you talk about that rear view exercise, that's sort of what I think about.
Yeah, definitely. So that if you do take the time to sit down and really just think about it, sit with it, be with it, and appreciate what you got from every stage.
Right.
You take that, especially at 15, at a young age, you would have learned so much in that scenario that you probably couldn't learn if someone sat you down and said, all right, Audley, here's how it's going to work.
Yep.
Sit down. Now, when the people come, you're going to talk to them like this, and this tie is going to make you feel more confident.
Right.
And
Right.
and you're going to go, come on, like, but that real teacher of experience is going to give you things that even maybe at the time you didn't anticipate that would stick, but 10 years later, 15 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later, all the way through, then you look back and go, you know what? That has allowed me to create this skill or this capability that has taken me from strength to strength, or I use it here and that's what opened this door for me and that's what created these opportunities. And those pieces are all super important, and we don't often, I guess, reflect on them and think about them,
Right.
because well, it's kind of seems like a waste of time sometimes, because like, why would I think about the past when I can think about what I want to concentrate on in the future?
Right.
But
There's some
those
value there.
things, if you
Yeah.
understand them better, it
Yes.
helps you to make better decisions about what you are going to do in the future.
Yeah.
And that piece is, that's part of what I try to teach people is there's a whole nice Venn diagram of, what you're good at, what you're like it's that
Ikigai. Yep.
ikigai kind of concept,
Ikigai.
that one,
Yep.
right? It's
Yep.
But if you're doing something that there's demand for, that there's a market for, that you enjoy and you're good at, and that aligns with your values, like your personal values, then if you can find the crossover in that Venn diagram, and most of us can, there's very few people that have no crossover in that Venn diagram, you're going to find something that is going to be meaningful to you. But unless you sit down and think about, well, what actually am I good at? And I've got a whole bunch of questions that I work through with people that,
Gotcha.
if you initially say, hey, what am I good at? A lot of people will kind of go, oh, like they kind of struggle with that question a little bit. But if you give them this list of questions that really start to open up your thinking, that helps you to really understand what you are good at. And then you can, then once that creative, or I guess reflective mode engages, then you can really dig in, what do I care about, what matters, what provides me satisfaction, fulfillment. You start to get into that. And until you know those things about yourself, and frankly write them down, because it's really easy to forget, um, and have them as a reference point to come back to, that helps you shape your future decision making and helps you end up in a position where you're going to be more satisfied.
Gotcha. And again, I just think it's a great exercise to go through, and that's why it's so valuable. When you think about what young people are faced with today, and again, that's your
Mm,
client group. Um, they're I mean, especially when they're going through school, there's so much expectations that they figure out what they want to do now for the rest of their lives, and there's not really much
yeah.
conversation around the fact that maybe what you're interested in now may change into something else. And there isn't a whole lot of talk about transferable skills, because we talk about transferable skills, what can you take from one to go where to somewhere else? But we're not encouraging them to go somewhere else. We're saying that's your job, and that's it, kind of a thing. Um, and you're right in terms of sort of the negative perceptions of today's young people in terms of not being committed and don't want. I think
Yep.
they're bang on in terms of, why can't I change? As my
Yep.
values develop, as my interests are altered because of life experiences, why can I not decide to pivot in a different direction? And I think their ability to respond to change as
Mm.
is much better, a higher level than some of us, and even people beyond are older than us. And so This is one of your thoughts on that, because I think it's when you talk about them not getting a fair shake, I agree with you
Yeah,
on that.
I totally agree. I think that the younger generation has a better capacity to deal with change than we do. But
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's probably true for every generation that has gone after the previous one. I think that, you know, I deal with change better than my parents did, and when my kid grows up, she's probably going to deal with change better than I have, or at least at that point in my life that I can do. And I think that there's definitely an element of, as people age, we just lose that flexibility. I think we lose that ability to deal with change, and we just don't want to do it. And we're like, well, I didn't have to do that, so you should just do what I
Right,
did. And
right.
telling that it's the worst advice, I think, is just telling someone blindly, just do what I did and look where I got, because it's not just your actions, it's your environment. And
Sure.
the environment in which you take these actions is really important. And it's a totally different environment today than it was 20 years ago. And the other key piece is that, like, and I think it still happens today in schools and universities as well. It's this, what are you going to be when you grow up? And well, you've got to choose something. And that kind of, you get that there's this pressure of, if you don't decide, and you don't do well, then it's the end of the world. Because, I don't know, schools have this uncanny ability to kind of scare the young people into thinking,
Sure,
well, I
sure.
need to know what I'm going to do. I need to know what I'm going to be. And probably, only a couple of years out of high school, I'm like, that was the biggest load of crap ever. Like, you could literally take a year off and do nothing and you'll be fine. There's always a path to get to where you want to go. This fear-based mentality of, telling people that you need to know what you're going to do, even like the whole, well, if you don't know what you're doing by 30, then, you've wasted your life. I'm like, rubbish, absolute rubbish, absolute rubbish. People can change their minds whenever they want, as long as, well, you can change your mind whenever you want, regardless. But I think the positive mind changing is going like, okay, I'm not liking what I'm doing, or it's not the right fit for me.
Right.
How can I make a positive change to get into doing something that I really love doing, and that, allows me to live the lifestyle that I want to live?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, really, really important. Really, really important. Um, Dan, tell me. So, okay, all right. So, I'm coming to you, whether I'm just getting started in my career or I've been there for a minute. I'm frustrated. I
Mm.
may not be experiencing health issues, but I know I need to change. Right? What 2 or 3 things are you telling me I need to do like right now?
So it depends on how dire the situation is, right?
Okay,
There's
fair enough.
people that I've worked with that I can quite honestly say, you need to start looking for a new job now, because this is doing you more harm than good to be there.
Okay,
And I know that we all have economic imperatives. We all have rent to pay and food to buy and all that sort of stuff. So, I personally never recommend, unless someone's in physical harm's way. Um, personally don't recommend to people to just pull the pin and run and then figure it out later. I'm not an advocate for that, although some people can be. Um, I'm not an advocate for that, because unless you're the kind of person that extreme level of pressure to find something new works for you,
yes,
most people aren't. Most people don't work well under that extreme financial pressure of, now you need something, so just go and find something, and it leads
right.
to worse consequences in the end. Um, but if you were experiencing, if you're feeling stuck and you're feeling frustrated, and you've got these feelings of, you've been passed over for promotions, or you've just gone, look, I'm not feeling like this is really the right thing for me anymore. The first step is always, well, we need to find out what the right thing for you is. And that's going to be a process. And I guess the second piece is that I would always set a reasonable expectation, because this is not a quick process. You're not going to see a change in 4 weeks. Sorry, like, you don't make significant changes to your career and life in 4 weeks. It just doesn't happen. Typically, it's a 12-month process.
Gotcha.
For most people to really create the change, accept that they need to create the change, um, get a feel for it and understanding, all of those things that you need to have a lot of mental structure in place before you can actually go out and achieve the things that you want to do.
Yep.
Without that, you're just going to make a change for the sake of making change, and maybe you end up somewhere better, maybe you end up somewhere worse, maybe you just don't know, because it's kind of like, throwing a dart at a dartboard. Maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't. You want to reduce the reliance on luck and increase the probability of making the right choice. It's never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but
Sure.
you want to give yourself a fighting chance. So I was, you know, I would say, if you came to me and you're like, look, I'm at the end of my rope here. I want to make a change, and I don't know what to do. It's going to be, okay, well, set expectations up front. This is going to take some time. Let's talk about a 3 month, it's going to take 3 months before we actually know what you want to do. So bake it into your head that you're going to be doing something that you're probably not that passionate about for the next 3 months. Okay.
Gotcha.
Acceptance. You accept that process. Okay.
Yep.
Now lock that away. Done. Next part is, okay, now we can work on what is it that you want to do? What is it that matters to you? Now we work on those personal values, getting to understand them. We find your talents, we find your skills, we find your innate kind of capabilities. And then we see where we can plug those puzzle pieces into what's available, what there's market demand for, what's right for you. How does it fit your personality? How does it fit your style? And we bring all of those things together, and then we just end up with this big list of potentials. And then we start doing the work. Then we come up with a decision-making framework for, this is how you will make decisions based in the future. I like to put a little engineering edge on it and use like a decision analysis and resolution framework with
There we go.
categories and weightings of, you choose your own categories, you weight them. What's the most important to you? You score them. You say, oh, this job's interesting, and then you score it, and you see what score it gets, and you compare it to that one. That stuff's all really cool.
It's
but
fun,
the one
actually.
thing that it's really fun. But I think the one thing that I tell all the people that I work with who end up using a system like that is that you will go through this process and you'll go, I am like, this is great. It's scientific. I'm putting, real thought behind this. And then you'll get to the end and you'll look at it, and let's say it was like 3 options, and you'll look at the 3 scores and you'll be like, that one scored the best, that one scored the lowest, and that one scored in between. And you're going to immediately know, your gut will tell you, oh, that's just not right. I don't want that.
Right.
And then you know that something in your system wasn't quite right for your decision-making process. But it doesn't actually matter, because guess what? You've got your answer anyway, because you're going to go, oh, that's not right. I really wanted that one. You go, ding, actually, I've got my answer. I didn't need this fancy decision-making framework, but it does help you get there anyway. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But at the end, you're going to get that feeling of, yes, this feels right, or no, this doesn't feel right. And either way, you've got the answer, and you get to move forward and make take the action and make the decision.
Yeah, no, I'm going back to the piece around fun and how fun it can be when you're going through that process. I think one, I can sort of think back on my own sort of career when I was navigating. The piece I found was a lot of fun was the networking and reaching out to different people and connecting. That was just fun. And I actually remember, so I made contact with one individual, and they said, hey, you know what? I'm going to connect you with someone else. And they wrote this little introduction. Here's Audley Stephenson. Here's what he's all about. And they forwarded that individual. I hadn't even met that person, but that person's like, hey, you know what? I know someone else. They took that exact same introduction. Hey, but none of these people were vouching for me. And not that none of the things weren't true, but they had never met me, right? And it just kind of became fun to watch this chain of all these strangers going, this guy's great, till we found, till something landed, but it was just a lot of fun. And I think if you can find ways to make the process enjoyable, because as you spoke earlier, it's not an overnight thing. It's going to take some time. And so if you can, make it enjoyable along the process, I think you're helping yourself a really, really a lot.
Well, you want to make the process, if you want to be able to stick to anything, it needs to be at least enjoyable, if not fun, if not like amazing, because if it's something you hate, you're going to stick to something and be consistent with it for long enough to get a result. If it's something you hate, you're just going to get to a point where you go, I really just don't want to do this anymore. There's no point. So find something, make it enjoyable, make it fun. I mean, I personally, as you may be able to tell by my manner, love networking, right? It's so, I love it. Meeting new people, talking to them about interesting things.
Sure.
Not everyone does love it.
Yes.
And so for those, like for people that I help with networking as well, if you're an introverted type, there are ways to network that don't have to completely drain your social battery. There are ways of doing these things,
Sure.
but I guess the assumptions, again, it's like these assumptions. Well, networking, you have to be gregarious and outgoing and really talkative and have everything to say and be the life of the party. You don't, but it's that common assumption. It's like that, it's what you get taught. It's what you kind of just pick up from social norms and the conversation about, within society is well, you're networking, you've got to go and drink and, hand out business cards. And there's always so much surface level misunderstanding.
Sure.
It's always the stuff beneath the surface level that you really get the true value from.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. When people talk about being audacious, right? It's the same thing. It's the loudest person in the room. It's the gregarious person, the guy, and it's not exactly that. I mean, maybe elements of it can exist, but it's much deeper. And so, no, I do appreciate those insights. Hey, Dan, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time hanging out with you like this, and the insights I think have been bang on with respects to just navigating our careers and the things that we can do as individuals. I certainly think the first step is making that first step, right?
Yep.
And being very intentional about that, because that's, I think, once you're clear on what you want, and sometimes you're not totally clear, but you have a general idea. But the key is a process of some sort. And if that process, for example, is looking in the rear view mirror as a starting point, then that's great. But it's being able to identify, and when you can do all these things, it'll point you in the general direction.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and all you want to do is be able to get there. And once you're there, okay, you can figure things out. So thank you for that. For listeners who wanted to connect with you, learn about you, or find out about your work, where can we send them?
Get me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I am most active. I'm a tragic daily LinkedIn user, so you can definitely get me on there. It's the best place. I respond to all DMs. If you comment on my stuff, I will reply. I love a conversation, as you may have figured out again. Yeah, best place is LinkedIn, and I still think it's the best network because the professional, people act differently when it comes to a professional little piece, and it
Absolutely.
makes a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, this is awesome. Dan, this has been great. Thank you. Keep up the great work and all the best.
Thanks, Audley.
Back we are here on the podcast. Now, one of the things we learned from our conversation with Dan is that success is a personal journey, and only defining what success means truly can you pave your pathway to a fulfilling and meaningful career. Dan's approach to career coaching emphasizes self-reflection, introspection, and creating a vision that guides you towards your professional audaciousness. I'd encourage you to connect with Dan directly for personalized career coaching and guidance. His contact information can be found in the show notes below. Stay tuned for special offers and products from Dan to further support your career development journey. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Audacious Link podcast and checking out. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Dan. If you did, certainly I'd say like, follow, subscribe, and share. If you haven't already done so, of course, that's how we reach even more individuals who are on their own audacious path and looking for that success in their lives. Let's continue this journey together towards living our best and most audacious lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.